All right, so you're here with us because you want to know what's actually going on, right? Like,
Yeah.
get past all the headlines and the hype and really understand the stuff that matters. And today, well, we're going to zero in on something pretty huge coming out of Europe. We're talking about a 20 billion euro investment into artificial intelligence. Yeah, you heard
Wow.
that right. 20 billion.
20 billion euros. That's why we're taking a deep dive today into this whole AI continent action plan that the European Commission has put forward. I mean, think about it. What does this kind of massive financial commitment really mean for Europe's future in the world of AI? That's what we're going to try to unpack today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a lot more than just some big number being thrown around, right? This could actually completely change the game, technologically speaking. On the one hand, you've got Europe stepping up, making this bold statement, saying, hey, we're going to be a major player in AI. But on the other hand, you've got the skeptics, the people wondering, is this really enough? Is this just too little, too late? And are they even focusing on the right things? So let's jump right in, shall we? First off, what's the whole idea behind this massive 20 billion euro investment?
Well, the European Commission is basically saying this is a turning point. They're saying this investment is how Europe is going to not just be part of the AI revolution, but lead it. And they're really emphasizing what Europe brings to the table: talent, a strong base in traditional industries, and how they can use all that to really push AI forward all across the continent.
I see. So it's about leveraging those existing strengths and giving them a massive AI boost, right? And this AI continent action plan, it sounds like a pretty comprehensive strategy, not just throwing money at the problem.
It's definitely multifaceted. Their main goal is to chart a course for Europe in AI development. And a big part of that is stimulating economic growth, making sure Europe stays competitive in vital sectors, like healthcare or the automotive industry.
Right. Makes sense. And when we talk numbers, it's hard to ignore the sheer size of this commitment. 200 billion euros total, mobilized through this Invest AI initiative, and then 20 billion of that specifically for building up to 5 AI gigafactories. Plus, they want to set up a network of 13 AI factories total. Okay, hold on, let's break that down. What's the difference between those existing AI factories and these new gigafactories they're talking about?
Good question. The AI factories we have now, think of them as really advanced research centers. They're like high-performance computing centers with the data infrastructure for researchers and businesses to work on and test their AI models. The gigafactories are something else entirely. They're on a whole other level, both in size and ambition. These are for taking on those moonshot projects, the ones with truly transformative potential, like major breakthroughs in healthcare and biotech, huge improvements in industrial processes and robotics, pushing the boundaries of scientific discovery.
So while the current AI factories are impressive, these gigafactories are going for something way bigger, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI. And what about processing power? How much of a difference are we talking about here?
Well, according to the Commission's documents, those top-tier AI factories we have right now, they have up to 25,000 advanced AI processors. A single gigafactory would have over 100,000. It's a massive increase in computational muscle. And they plan on using Europe's existing supercomputing network to set up those 13 AI factories across the continent.
So the ambition is definitely there. And you mentioned Invest AI, that's all about getting the private sector involved, right? Because these gigafactory projects are going to need way more than just public funds.
Yeah, that's the key. They know they need a huge influx of private capital to make this happen. They're aiming to attract 20 billion euros in private investment, and Invest AI is the vehicle to coordinate all that funding, both public and private. That 200 billion euro figure we talked about, that's the target for the total investment across all these different AI projects. And then 20 billion of that is specifically earmarked for building these first few gigafactories.
And it's not just about the hardware, right? They also have this Cloud and AI Development Act. It's all about tripling the EU's data center capacity in the next 5 to 7 years. And they keep hammering on sustainability too. So it sounds like they're trying to build a whole ecosystem for AI from the ground up, from computing power and data capacity to bringing in the best talent.
Absolutely, that's exactly it. They want technological sovereignty in AI. They don't want to rely on advancements in infrastructure that's controlled from somewhere else. But as you said earlier, there are some big questions about whether all this investment and planning will be enough to actually get them there.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. Because while it all sounds promising, there are some real challenges and potential roadblocks, right? And the biggest one that keeps coming up is how Europe stacks up against the current AI leaders, the US and China. Can Europe really catch up, or is this 20 billion just a drop in the bucket?
That's a big question. And there are reports, like the one from Stanford University, that show Europe is really lagging behind in some key areas of AI development. For example, in 2024, the vast majority of influential AI models came from the US, 40 of them, and China had 15. Europe, only 3, and all 3 were from French institutions. So yeah, there's a gap there.
Wow, that's a pretty significant difference. And it's not just about creating these fancy models, right? That same Stanford report also looked at the overall AI ecosystem, things like private investment, AI patents, research activity. And Europe didn't exactly shine there either. The UK was third, but they're not in the EU anymore. France and Germany were further down the list. So it makes you wonder, can 20 billion euros really bridge that gap?
It's a valid concern. Some experts are saying that the US and China are investing so much more, like 10 times more, that it's going to be extremely tough for Europe to catch up. And then there's the whole issue of energy consumption. These gigafactories are going to need a ton of power. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of processors, and those things are notorious energy hogs. Plus, they need a lot of water for cooling.
And in a world where everyone's talking about sustainability, that raises some serious red flags, right?
For sure. The Commission says these facilities should run on green energy as much as possible and mentions water recycling. But environmental groups are worried. They're saying all these data centers are already using a ton of energy, and that could really hurt Europe's climate goals. Remember that quote from the Greenpeace spokesperson? They said every power-hungry data center risks becoming another drain on polluting power plants. They brought up Ireland as an example, where data centers are already using up a big chunk of the electricity.
Right, so it's that classic trade-off between technological progress and environmental responsibility. And then there's the cost. We've seen estimates of 3 to 5 billion euros per gigafactory. That's a lot more expensive than the current AI factories. So this 20 billion, even though it's a lot of money, might only be enough for a handful of these gigafactories. So getting that private investment is going to be crucial, and there's no guarantee they'll get it all.
Exactly. And beyond the energy and the money, there's the technology itself. The EU wants to make its own AI semiconductors in Europe. Those advanced chips that are at the heart of all these AI factories and gigafactories. But right now, they rely heavily on manufacturers outside of Europe for those chips, building up their own production capacity. That's a huge, huge task.
And even with the AI Act, which Europe has been working on for a while now, there's still a lot of debate and uncertainty, right?
Yeah, the AI Act was just formally approved last year, and it doesn't even fully come into effect until August 2027. But the Commission is already talking about simplifying it to cut down on red tape. And that's got consumer protection groups pretty worried. The European Consumer Organization, BEUC, is saying they should focus on implementing and enforcing the AI Act as it is, not weakening consumer protections. Especially when we all know AI has the potential to cause some real harm. And this guy, Frederico Oliveira da Silva from BEUC, he said it's alarming that the Commission's already thinking about cutting requirements before most of the act has even been put into practice.
So the EU has this difficult balancing act, don't they? They want to encourage innovation, stay competitive, and that often leads to calls for less regulation. But they also have to deal with the ethical and societal implications of AI and make sure consumers are protected. And the Commission is saying they're still committed to the risk-based approach of the AI Act, but they also want to reduce administrative burdens. It's a tough situation.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got these two contrasting viewpoints on this massive 20 billion euro AI investment. On one hand, it's a bold move by the EU to try to catch up, to become a real leader in AI and have technological independence in something that's going to shape the future.
Right.
On the other hand, there are doubts about whether the investment is big enough, given the challenges, the potential environmental impact of all this energy-intensive infrastructure, and whether simplifying the AI Act could actually weaken important safeguards.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, let's think about everything we've discussed. The massive investments in the US and China, the potential conflicts with energy use and the environment, and all the ongoing debate about regulation. And that leads us to a really important question for you, our listener. Considering all these factors, what do you think is the most important thing that will determine if the EU can actually pull this off and achieve their AI ambitions?
It's a complex issue with lots of moving parts. It's probably not just about the money itself, but also about Europe's ability to build a thriving innovation ecosystem. They need to attract the best talent from all over the world, figure out the complex regulatory landscape, and find solutions to those infrastructure and sustainability challenges. It's a long game, and the decisions they make in the next few years are going to be crucial.
I agree. And if you want to explore this topic further, definitely check out the AI strategies of the US and China. You can get a better understanding of the global competition that way. And taking a closer look at the EU's AI Act will give you more insight into the regulatory environment they're working with. It's all changing so fast, so staying informed is key. Thanks for listening to our deep dive.
What are your thoughts on today's topic? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed.